Long before modern borders hardened, the map riders once crossed the Iranian plateau beneath cold stars, believing another empire would soon erase this stubborn civilization. Across these harsh mountains and endless deserts, conquerors arrived with certainty in their hearts, convinced that Persia would become just another forgotten ruin in history. Alexander of Macedonia believed it. Roman generals believed it. Arab armies believed it. Mongol horsemen believed it as they thundered across the burning plains. Each invasion carried the same quiet assumption that Iran would collapse like Babylon, vanish like the Hittites, or dissolve like the ancient Assyrians. The cities burned, capitals fell, dynasties shattered. Yet something deeper beneath the surface of this land refused to disappear. Empires could conquer the territory, but they never truly conquered the civilization that lived inside its language, its poetry, and its stubborn memory. Decades would pass, and something strange began happening to the conquerors who ruled these lands. Their courts slowly spoke Persian. Their architecture borrowed Persian beauty. Their rulers adopted Persian ceremony and Persian political imagination. It was as if the plateau itself absorbed those who tried to dominate it, transforming conquerors into participants of the civilization they had defeated. For more than 5,000 years, Iran mastered a rare historical skill that few cultures ever achieved: the ability to lose battles, yet survive forever. And the deeper we look into that mystery, the clearer one question becomes: how did this civilization learn to turn defeat itself into a weapon of immortality? Long before Persia became a name whispered through empires, the Iranian plateau already carried the quiet weight of an ancient human story. Across these rugged valleys and deserts, early communities slowly transformed scattered settlements into organized societies, thousands of years before many famous civilizations emerged. Archaeological sites such as Jiroft reveal sophisticated urban cultures flourishing in Iran nearly 7,000 years ago, long before classical Greece even existed. Pottery, stone carvings, and stepped structures discovered there suggest a complex society already experimenting with art, trade, and early political organization. These early cultures did not live in isolation, but interacted constantly with neighboring worlds, including Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the early civilizations of Central Asia. Among the earliest organized states to rise in this region was Elam, a powerful kingdom centered in the ancient city of Susa. By the 26th century before Christ, Elam had already grown strong enough to challenge the mighty Sumerian cities of Mesopotamia. Conflicts between Elam and the Akkadian Empire eventually produced something extraordinary in human history. Instead of endless destruction, the two powers signed one of the first recorded diplomatic treaties ever written. The agreement recognized Elam's independence, while aligning its foreign policy with the Akkadian Empire. This moment quietly introduced an idea that would shape global politics for millennia. Long before the modern world spoke of diplomacy and international law, the Iranian plateau had already helped invent the language of negotiation between civilizations. But another transformation was approaching from the northern steppes. Nomadic Indo-Iranian tribes were moving southward toward the mountains that would soon become their permanent home. Several powerful forces slowly shaped the civilization that would later become Persia, turning scattered tribes into one of the most durable cultures in human history. The first force was geography itself, a plateau surrounded by mountains, deserts, and narrow passages that forced its inhabitants to become resilient survivors. These landscapes were harsh, but they also created natural defensive barriers that protected the core of the Iranian plateau from total destruction. The second force was migration, when Indo-Iranian tribes moved south from the steppes of Central Asia between the 20th and 15th centuries before Christ. These newcomers brought with them languages belonging to the Indo-European family, linking ancient Iranian speech to Greek Latin, and many languages spoken across Europe today. After settling on the plateau, these tribes gradually blended with older cultures such as the Elamites, creating a new cultural identity. Over time, they began calling themselves Arya, a word meaning noble, and their homeland became known as Aryanam, the land of the Aryans. The third force shaping this civilization was not military power, but belief, a revolutionary worldview born on the Iranian plateau. Long before Christianity or Islam appeared, the prophet Zoroaster introduced a religion that radically transformed how people understood the universe. Zoroastrian teaching described existence as a cosmic struggle between Ahura Mazda, the spirit of truth and light, and Angra Mainyu, the force of darkness. For the first time in human history, time itself was imagined as moving forward toward a final, decisive battle between good and evil. This idea would later echo through Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, shaping the way billions of people understand history and destiny. Imagine a young Persian messenger standing before sunrise, beside the dusty road that stretches across the vast empire of King Darius. He is not a nobleman or general, only a courier entrusted with carrying royal messages between distant cities scattered across mountains and deserts. In the silence of early morning, horses breathe clouds into the cold air, while guards prepare the sealed tablets bearing the authority of the king. The road beneath his feet is part of the Royal Road, a vast network connecting distant provinces from Anatolia to the distant valleys near India. Along this road, stations stand every few dozen kilometers, each holding fresh horses, water, and soldiers ready to protect imperial communication. For this boy, the empire is not an abstract political system, but a daily journey through different languages, clothes, and customs. In one city, he hears Babylonian merchants bargaining loudly in crowded markets filled with spices and textiles from distant lands. In another town, he passes Greek traders discussing philosophy, while Egyptian craftsmen carve images into temple walls. Despite these differences, every province recognizes the same imperial authority, represented by Persian administrators and royal decrees. This empire does not rule only through fear, but through a carefully balanced system of tolerance, administration, and shared economic stability. For millions of people scattered across 3 continents, Persia quietly becomes the first political system that truly resembles a global empire. Yet even the strongest systems eventually face pressures that begin to shake their foundations. The turning point did not arrive with a whisper, but with the thunder of armies marching from the mountains of Macedonia. By the 4th century before Christ, the vast Persian Empire had grown so large that its center struggled to control distant provinces. Satraps governed enormous territories, wealth flowed through royal roads, and the imperial court still projected confidence and ceremonial authority. Yet beneath the surface, administrative fatigue and regional rivalries quietly weakened the structure built by earlier kings. Into this moment stepped a young ruler from the northern edge of the Greek world, Alexander of Macedon. His army was smaller than Persia's, but disciplined, mobile, and guided by a bold strategy that aimed directly at the empire's heart. Battle after battle shattered the illusion of Persian invincibility as Macedonian forces advanced deeper into imperial territory. Finally, in the year 330 before Christ, the ancient capital of Persepolis fell into Alexander's hands. The palaces that once symbolized centuries of Persian power burned beneath the night sky in flames visible across the surrounding hills. To many observers of the ancient world, it seemed that the long history of Persian civilization had reached its final chapter. A foreign dynasty now ruled the lands of Iran, and Greek culture spread across the cities built by the conqueror. Yet what followed would become one of the strangest reversals in the entire history of empire. At first glance, Alexander's conquest seemed absolute, replacing Persian rule with a vast Hellenistic world stretching from Greece to the mountains of Central Asia. Greek governors administered cities, Greek soldiers settled in new colonies, and Greek language spread through administrative and commercial life. Yet beneath this political surface, something slower and more subtle began unfolding across the Iranian plateau. The conquerors themselves gradually encountered the deep cultural gravity of the civilization they had defeated. Alexander adopted Persian royal dress and court rituals, signaling a dramatic shift in how the new empire presented authority. His successors inherited the territory, but struggled to impose purely Greek structures on a population shaped by centuries of Persian tradition. Over time, the eastern provinces began reshaping the ruling elite, rather than the other way around. By the 3rd century before Christ, a new power rose from the Iranian world itself, the Parthians. These Iranian rulers expelled the weakening Seleucid Greek state and established a new empire rooted firmly in Persian political traditions. Parthian cavalry dominated the battlefields of the Middle East, while Persian language and cultural forms reasserted their influence. Even the mighty Roman Empire discovered that conquering Iran would prove far more difficult than defeating Mediterranean kingdoms. From this point onward, history repeated a strange pattern across the Iranian plateau. Foreign conquerors could win wars, but the civilization they encountered slowly transformed them in return. Across centuries of invasions and collapsing dynasties, something deeper than political power quietly shaped the Iranian understanding of history. For many civilizations, defeat meant disappearance, yet Iranian culture developed a radically different interpretation of survival. The ancient teachings of Zoroastrian thought had already framed existence as a long struggle between forces of light and darkness. In that worldview, history was not a random cycle, but a meaningful journey moving toward a final resolution. Even when armies lost battles or cities fell to foreign rulers, the deeper story of civilization could still continue. This philosophical lens allowed Iranian society to interpret catastrophe not as an ending, but as another stage within a longer cosmic struggle. Ideas, language, poetry, and cultural memory became more important than temporary political control of territory. When Arab armies conquered Iran during the 7th century, they introduced Islam and the Arabic language into the region. Yet Persian scholars, poets, and administrators gradually shaped the intellectual life of the Islamic world itself. Persian language returned in literature, science, and court culture, influencing societies from Central Asia to the Indian subcontinent. Centuries later, the same pattern appeared when Mongol rulers established states across the Iranian plateau. Within a few generations, these nomadic conquerors adopted Persian administration, Persian art, and Persian literary culture. In this way, Iran transformed the meaning of conquest itself, turning foreign domination into another path through which its civilization continued evolving. Today, the name Iran often appears in headlines filled with tension, sanctions, diplomacy, and geopolitical conflict. Yet behind those modern images lies a civilization whose historical memory stretches back more than 5,000 years. Few countries on Earth have experienced such a long sequence of invasions, collapses, dynastic changes, and foreign domination. Even fewer societies manage to transform those crises into mechanisms of cultural survival. Again and again, the Iranian plateau witnessed the same historical pattern repeating across centuries. Empires arrived believing they would erase the past and reshape the land according to their own identity. Yet over time, the conquerors themselves became participants in the civilization they once tried to control. Language, poetry, architecture, and administrative traditions slowly reshaped rulers who initially arrived as outsiders. This strange historical process created a cultural resilience rarely seen anywhere else in world history. When we read about Persia in ancient chronicles or Iran in modern news, we are often describing the same enduring civilization. The names changed, the governments changed, and the borders shifted many times across centuries. But the deeper cultural continuity beneath those changes remained astonishingly persistent. The story of Iran reminds us that power in history is not always measured by who wins the battlefield. Sometimes the most enduring victories belong to civilizations that survive long enough to reshape the world around them. Stand today on the Iranian plateau at dusk, and the landscape still carries echoes of every empire that once crossed it. Caravans once followed these valleys, soldiers marched across these plains, and kings believed their victories would last forever. Yet the mountains remained, the deserts remained, and the civilization rooted in this land quietly continued. Names changed across centuries, Elam, Persia, Iran, yet the deeper story beneath those names never truly disappeared. What survived was not merely a state or a dynasty, but a cultural memory stretching through poetry, language, and belief. In the ancient ruins of Persepolis, broken columns still rise against the sky, like silent witnesses to forgotten triumphs. Nearby villages speak a language whose roots stretch back to the earliest Indo-Iranian tribes who entered this land thousands of years ago. Empires came seeking glory, wealth, or domination, but few understood the deeper nature of the civilization they encountered. Iran was never simply a territory to be conquered or a prize to be seized. It was a cultural current, strong enough to absorb those who tried to control it. Across 5,000 years of upheaval, invasion, and transformation, that current never fully stopped flowing. Perhaps that is the real lesson hidden inside the long history of this land. Sometimes civilizations do not survive by resisting the world around them. Sometimes they survive by slowly reshaping the world itself.